Welcome. We are here to celebrate the new children's book by Lois Lehman, Grandma Lois, called Walking with Grandma. It is published in Canada by Arts Union, John Mackley and me, and we gratefully acknowledge the Abenaki First Nation on whose traditional lands we live. Walking with Grandma is published in the US by Lois Lehman in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. Lois gratefully acknowledges the First Nations, including the Lenni Lenape, Susquehannock, Shawnee, and Seneca peoples, on whose traditional lands she resides. We are recording this session so that some of Lois's grandchildren can watch it later. If you object to being in the recording, we would just ask you to please turn off your video camera. Grandma Lois and Grandpa Milt have lived in the Fairmount Homes community since November 2019. Lois taught in a Montessori school in Lancaster when her children were young. During her career as a certified nurse midwife, she attended home births in rural Lancaster County and in South Dakota, and she worked as a public health nurse in Bethel, Alaska. She also has a bachelor's in communications and is co-author of a 465-page family history, A.D. and Annie, that is full of stories. Most of you already know Lois. Being her youngest sister, I have known her all my life. One of my happiest childhood memories is of her waking me up early in the morning to go out on a secret mission, which was a walk in the cornfield. In Walking with Grandma, Lois offers young children just such mystery missions, exploring the secret life hidden in nature all around us. Walking with Grandma contains 6 stories about 6 different walks around the Fairmount area. The stories are aimed at children aged 3 and 9. Her tone is very personal, and the texts and drawings are in her own hand. It is as if Grandma Lois is writing a personal letter, and the readers are her very own grandchildren, going along with her on a secret mission. The stories are very personable too. Grandma Lois shares her mischievous sense of humor, but most of all, her close observation and appreciation of outdoor life. And now let's hear from Lois herself. Lois, tell us why you wrote these stories.
So I started writing letters, and then when the pandemic came, it was I just decided that, well, I want my grandchildren to know, remember their grandmother and the pandemic. And so I thought I could weave in some things of nature and tell them how it is for us during the pandemic. I want them to know that they can get through the pandemic also. So I started writing and then drawing little pictures. I had no idea that it would be a book later on. So some of the pictures, illustrations at first are kind of wild. And that's the reason. I love my grandchildren and want to interact with them. I want them to, I think letter writing, they can save the letters for, 100 years. They can take them to bed and put them under their pillow. So I start to try to develop the character and interactions with nature, and then throw in some things that they can think about maybe at this stage in their life.
And then you've got that Grandpa Milt in there too.
Yeah.
Who's a little bit of a curmudgeon.
Yes. And some of the grandchildren love the interactions between Grandma and Grandpa. He didn't want to wear his mask, or he wore it down on his chin, things like that. Make it interesting. Yeah.
So if I show some slides of photos of the places where you took walks, would you be able to tell us about those places a little bit?
Okay.
Okay. This is where one of the places you walk.
Yes, right. This is the entrance to Wheat Ridge Drive. There's a larger sign down by Farmersville Road, but when you Fairmount community is on both sides of Cat's Back Road, and the reason it's called Cat's Back Road because it goes over a small hill that looks like a cat that's arching up its back, and so that road is called Cat's Back Road.
Okay. And there you are walking over the road, right?
Yes, I'm walking up the hill at another place, and you see how they piled up rocks when they built the buildings. So I don't know what's all under it's a shale. There's a lot of shale. The soil is not all that good, but they could build the buildings there. There are apartments on both sides of Cat's Back Road, and then there are sections for personal care and health care. So that's one of the paths I walk on. Yeah, this was the other morning. That's the sun coming up. I thought it was foggy, but I think it was some smoke coming down from Canada.
Yeah, right.
West. Okay.
We had smog here too, no doubt from the US.
This is just one view that we can see from Fairmount, from the hill. So yeah, there are some higher up places we can look. This is my favorite path down past those trees. Some of those trees are mulberry trees, and in the early summer, the mulberries get ripe and they fall down and make the path dark, but then the rain washes them away and the birds eat them. The birds like to eat them. So
that's where some of the stars of your stories live, right? The goats. And
yes,
chickens.
there are neighbors there that live on the other side of those trees, and they have ducks and chickens and goats and a pony. So sometimes they are out, and I just love to see those little goats running around. This is an outhouse we no longer use.
A decorative outhouse.
So it's ornamental. You can say it's ornamental, but to me it looks like a real, it was there, a real one at one time. Queen Anne's lace, lots of it are around here, growing in the wild areas. So I really love them. And you can see there's a fly on there also.
A pollinator.
Yeah. Now I love spider webs, especially in heavy dew mornings, because every strand is filled with dew, and then the sun comes out and it's just beautiful. Also, every blade of grass has, or almost every blade, I never counted for sure, but a drop of dew on, and when the sun shines, it sparkles just like a diamond.
Are you out taking a walk every sunrise, Lois?
No, not every sunrise. Sometimes I don't get out.
Okay, well, sometimes the sun doesn't get out either.
Yeah, I may go later in the day or something. All right, Milkweed Blossoms, really beautiful. If you look at each of those little blossoms, or parts of the blossom, there are some that turn this way and some that turn that way. And Fern showed me that. And both Fern and I are trying to grow milkweed, And I do have a cage here now that I put some caterpillars in. And I have one caterpillar that escaped, and he has his she, I don't know, chrysalis on the Venetian blind, right where we can really keep an eye on it. So that's good. There's a caterpillar munching away and growing fast. Mhm. And here's purple coneflowers, and they're painted lady butterfly there.
And since you mentioned Fern, I wanted to make sure people knew who the photographers are that took these photos.
Fern, Fern lives here.
Fern Bauman.
Yeah.
And
then Rose Groff.
okay.
Yeah, they took pictures for me. Here I am, and it's evening, and it's one of the trees here. This is not the biggest tree around, but I love trees, and I often go out and hug them. Like, can I get my arms around them? They represent a strength to me. They're strong. They stand for a long time. Many years it takes to grow them. Here I am. This is on a neighbor's property. It's a Hearst place, but they allow us, it's okay if we go over there. So I'm looking for frogs and frog eggs, and yes, I love to sneak out to hear those bullfrogs croaking. They're like on the guitar, you know, that kind of a noise.
Mm.
And the bulrushes close by where the frogs hide in there, and the red-winged blackbirds make a nest. And then here's their swimming places. This is over at the Hearst. They allow the neighbors to swim in there on that end. And this is Jenny the Swan. I have her in some of my stories. I have written maybe 20 stories, and this book is only 6 stories. So I didn't get all of, I mean.
That means there are more books to come, Lois, right?
You might see some pictures that don't really, well, yeah, maybe. But anyway, Jenny lost her husband, and so she gets lonely, but she will come over and talk with me, or I'll talk to her. This is a little pond between 2 of the buildings at Fairmount. So Milton and I went out and sat there and looked at these goldfish and one catfish in there.
And there's a story about
yes, there's
the catfish and the goldfish.
Yeah, so one time there was a frog there. So I know there's some frogs in there.
And you go on picnics.
Yeah, this picture just shows our picnic basket. Sometimes during the pandemic, and they encouraged us to take walks. And I thought, oh, why don't we have a picnic in a gazebo? So Milton and I went out and had a picnic there, and it was delightful. Yeah.
And that's in one of the stories too.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is the end of the slideshow. Grandma and Grandpa.
In the evening, we often sat there and looked out over the countryside. Yeah. And yeah, it was very good.
That's great. Well, maybe somebody has a question or comment. You can unmute yourselves now if you would like to. Otherwise, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lois, I really enjoyed that. This is Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
A very imaginative writer, Lois. I just think it's so delightful hearing your words. And I'm recalling one of the telephone calls that Dad and I made when from Landis Homes to you one time. You were out on a walk, or maybe you called us, I don't know. And you were sitting by that pond on the adjoining land there where there was a slide of it, and you told us about the swan. So
Okay.
are we going to hear a story about the swan, or is this the only
Well,
story?
it's not in this book, okay? It's later on, yeah,
It's in the next
Oh,
book.
wait, may I ask another question?
yeah.
Do you go swimming in the pond, Lois?
No, I don't.
Well, that surprises me because you used to go swimming at the YWC or YMCA.
I remember that.
Where is the midwife?
You would tell me that you didn't really swim, you just bobbed up and down, but that's a swimming.
Glad you came up again.
I have a
No.
question.
Yeah.
How many worms did you rescue?
A worm. About 4, I think.
Or, okay.
Yeah. Well, the most recently, when they came out, I gathered them up in my hand and took them to my garden. And they
Okay.
tried to get out of my hand.
Tell us about your garden, Lois.
Oh, well, I wanted to plant some milkweed around. I wasn't really aware that milkweed grows up everywhere. It can, because it has a strong root system. But anyway, the place I wanted to plant it, I had to get permission, for any use of the land. And they said, oh no, weeds. This is a weed. And the people looking down from the apartments, they won't like to see weeds. And so they gave me a piece of land down by the sewer treatment plant. And and the topsoil is very thin. And so I built it up, and I have milkweed growing down there, and then milkweed came up all over. So it's like these milkweed want to come into my garden for protection, or they'll be mowed down, Then I planted sunflowers from sunflower seed that fell out of the bird feeder. And then Becky Leatherman over at Landis Homes gave me Mexican sunflowers. So I have them, and they're really big bushy ones with bright red blossoms on. So that's my garden.
Wow.
I had one more question. Does milkweed grow good in shade? In shade places?
It takes full sun.
Oh,
I think it tries to grow in the shade, but the best thing is full sunlight.
sun. Yeah, that's my problem. I don't have much full sun.
Oh,
Too many trees in the backyard, but I love my trees, so.
okay.